Welcome back to the Hogtown Podcast, episode 53. We've had a couple of guests over the past few weeks. Today, we're just going to do a quick, update of what's going on in the city, what's going on with our projects, and lay of the land.
Yeah, I think it's been a while. I don't think a ton of policy changes. There's been a couple of things coming out of City Hall, and obviously some developments on the mayor's race that are starting to shape up.
Yeah, first quarter is typically slow, but yeah, you're right. I think the big news, maybe we'll start on this, is John Tory confirmed yesterday that he's not going to run for mayor. So this was, of course, the big question with Chow, the incumbent, certainly running for re-election. Bradford making it very clear to everyone that the way he puts it is his name will be on the ballot on election day. Like an immovable object. And then the big question was whether Tory would also run and then kind of split the right of center vote. Tory is out. That to me seems like the best news of the year for Brad.
Totally.
So far. And in fact, Abacus Data put out a poll that coincided with Tory's announcement where it showed Chow and Bradford head to head, and it was 37 Chow, 34 Brad. So that actually is quite close with like 7 or so months left to go to the election.
Yeah, and as I understand it, the race doesn't officially kick off for, I think, a couple more months, which means there's still time for candidates to, kick the tires on a potential run.
Yeah, and Tory being out might look like a vacuum to some people.
Yeah. It's funny, last year I remember when Brad started really like definitively saying, like, I will be on the ballot no matter what.
Yeah.
It felt sort of like almost premature to me, but now in hindsight, it almost feels like nobody's gonna be thinking, oh, maybe I can talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
I think you need to signal that. At minimum, you might change your mind, but you need to signal like I'm in for real. I'm not angling for like deputy mayor.
That's right.
I'm going for so. A couple names that have been floated since Tory's announcement was first Rod Phillips, former finance minister for the province. He confirmed that he is not interested in running. Was it Rod Phillips who was doing the COVID calls from like St. Martin?
Yeah, he's the one who like ran off to the Caribbean and then he left that role and ended up in some like junior portfolio. But also like I think broadly speaking, anybody coming into the race is going to start with a massive just like name recognition disadvantage because Brad's just been working his butt off.
Well, I guess it depends who it is, right?
Yeah, I mean there are a few exceptions to that, but Rod Phillips to me would not be somebody that everyone would be like, I know who that is.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So I think it's smart that he decided not to move.
Yeah,
forward.
Phillips would be like like Mark Saunders last time. He'd be a guy that people know and could pull together a real team, but like,
including as I understand it, Mark Saunders last time. At least the like rumor was that he was like the Ford preferred candidate.
Yeah.
Which matters. Like there's political organization and sort of like behind those scenes people that want certain people to get elected and not others. It doesn't sound like Brad is like the favorite of the Ford camp.
Yeah.
Which is like Kuvalis was quoted saying that.
Well, I've got these quotes. So the other thing maybe it's worth saying is that Mikey Ford is another name that's been floated. So Michael Ford, of course, is Doug Ford's nephew. Both Doug and Rob Ford's nephew. He's like the sister's son. He was an MPP for like multiculturalism or something for the province. He resigned for health reasons.
Relatively young still. I think he's 32 years old.
Young guy, extremely shy. Seems like a nice guy, but to me, like not at all cut out to be a politician. Just kind of like pushed into it, I guess maybe because of the family
legacy. But it shows to me that like Ford doesn't like his choices. So he's like maybe nudging his nephew.
I also wonder how much of this is Nick Kuvalis messing around. And this is us not kind of like saying anything he hasn't said himself. But there was a Toronto Star story where he was quoted as saying that he's basically like not happy with Bradford. This is a quote. His personal attacks against John Tory and unrelenting disloyal behavior has left a very bad taste in my mouth. There are other people who feel the same way. There is zero chance that I will work for Brad. I would sooner help Olivia defeat Brad. And for those who don't know, Nick Kuvalis is a well-known pollster, but also campaigner, and was like a longtime campaigner for Tory for all three of his elections. For Rob Ford before him, for Doug Ford since then, and just like as he also was on Team Bylaw last time.
Right.
And my sense, like I don't like this kind of like hesitation on Bradford. I don't know if it's coming from the premier or if it's like Nick still doesn't like that he ran against Bylaw last time because Bylaw, you might remember, could have won.
Yeah.
She actually won the election day votes, but she didn't have enough advance votes. And
Tory's fault, really.
Largely Tory's fault for endorsing her too late. But maybe if Brad wasn't in the race and a couple others weren't, she would be mayor by now. She is now, of course, the CEO of Build Canada Homes. But there were some other quotes in this article from people allegedly in the Tory camp. Bradford has not exactly, this is a quote, not exactly endeared himself to a lot of people who would be in the Tory camp, said a second close source. And a third Tory ally said, quote, as it stands now, I'd be one of those people that does everything to ensure Brad doesn't win.
That's so crazy to me. Like this, to me,
so lame. So lame.
if you were in the quote unquote Tory camp and now you're anybody but Brad, that means you're willing to support Chow, or at least not do anything to oppose. So it doesn't even come down to like policy.
These people,
it's just like personal politics. And to me, what I like about Brad is that he's not scared or sort of shy of just like ruffling feathers with the old guard, because like he is sort of a new generation of politicians.
And it is worth noting that these are always, campaign people. That's what it says. And campaign people are largely mercenary. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of them, if not more, have tried to get into the Brad circle for a contract to get paid to help him campaign and have been turned down. And maybe now they're angling for like an Olivia Chow contract or a Michael Ford contract. This is how this is their business development. So like, I wouldn't put that past any of these people.
Yeah, different crowd. But I remember being at that event that we went to last year where Brad hosted an event to sort of talk about like the polling and the path to victory for his candidacy. And like one of the like very obvious things that stood out to me is just like how old the average crowd, like the audience member was, because they were very much like Tory's people. And it's sort of, you probably want their support, but you also want to shift your focus to like, who's the generation behind those people?
Yeah.
Right?
You also don't want like, there's also this kind of like subcategory of political consultants and campaigners that get retained by campaigns just to neutralize.
Yeah.
So like people who are loudmouths on social media, a campaign might pay them just to like shut up, which is like, again, it's like a crazy business model. But like, even if you don't need some of these people on your team, you kind of don't want them out there against you, because that certainly doesn't help. So we'll see what happens. I think this is kind of crazy. At least
to me, it just gives more encouragement to a would-be third candidate to jump into the race.
Yeah, totally.
Some of these people are out there.
Because if let's say I'm Nick Uvalis and I either have a contract with Chow or I want to position myself for a contract with Chow, like the best, most effective thing he could do is split the right of center vote and encourage someone like Michael Ford to run.
Yeah.
So, it's like there's like a sabotage.
Although weirdly, and I'm sure this is just a timing and sort of strategic consideration, but Chow still hasn't announced, which I don't know if that's normal for an incumbent to not have like there's still clearly stated her intent.
To me, that doesn't seem crazy. There's still time. It's we're early March. The election's in I think late October. I think it's still early. If it's not her, again, I'd be very surprised because incumbents typically run, and she's old but not that old. But I guess there'd be kind of like an unofficial primary on the left of center between, her, people like Joe Cressy, Mike Layton, to like name a candidate.
Maybe Josh Matlow?
And in fact, on this question, Matlow's not really in those circles.
Right.
So Matlow might come in as a spoiler, but he wouldn't be like the Progress Toronto candidate. They don't like him. An interesting thing is like this idea of like, Chow allies should encourage, Michael Ford or Rod Phillips or whoever to split the right of center vote. There is this interesting thought of like people should encourage, Brad allies should find like someone to the left of Chow to like split the left of center vote. I don't know who that might be, because the left municipally in Toronto is actually quite organized.
Yeah.
And works closest.
They'd probably be more likely to block that from happening than the right.
Yeah. You would need someone who's young and really outside of the system, not in that Progress TO world. One candidate who did reasonably well for being a nobody really last time was Chloe Brown.
Right.
Someone like that who could, because there are criticisms of Chow from the right, but there are also criticisms of Chow from the left that she's not enough like a Mandami type character. So who knows? The
other name that we haven't heard anything from in a little while is Anthony Fury, and I don't think there's a path for him, but there is a path for him to take 10% of the vote. And
absolutely, he actually performed again quite well for being a first timer last time. He would be a total spoiler for Brad. Brad's best shot, I think, is to have both Tory and Fury like stumping for him and
Right.
campaigning for him. And I don't know how you make that happen because there are a lot of personalities involved. And Tory especially, like, what could you really offer him? He's an old retired guy with a young girlfriend.
Knowing Tory, I mean, even the statement that he put out saying, I will not hesitate to endorse somebody, when we know from the last election that he absolutely hesitated to endorse somebody.
Probably to
so he'll probably
the election.
My guess is he'll come out and endorse whoever is the main opponent to Chow. Maybe it's Bradford, but he'll do it like at the last minute.
He announced his intention to not run fairly early for him.
Right.
He's typically the kind of guy who waits the last minute. But if Brad could somehow get Tory out stumping for him, I think Fury would be very helpful. I think that Integrity TO guy, Daniel Tate, I think his name is, would be very helpful. Like you want there to be like some coalition type movement on the right of center.
Yeah.
Not just like various personalities.
Well, Michael Ford will be interesting to watch because that was to me a little bit of a curveball. I didn't expect to see that name thrown into the mix.
No, me neither. I don't know him personally, so this is not a personal comment, but extremely shy, extremely awkward, and resigned from provincial politics for health reasons.
Yeah,
like those don't like. This feels like a planted
could have
story.
Easily won re-election and stayed on as a minister provincially.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like a winning.
And in a provincial campaign, you kind of ride the wave of your party.
Yeah,
municipally, like you're doing the work. I really don't see it, but we'll see.
We'll see.
So that's the mayoral campaign. We'll keep tabs. It should kind of like heat up.
We did an episode last year with David Coletto from Abacus Data, who you referenced, that I think still relatively interesting because he was sort of playing out these hypothetical scenarios of a head-to-head versus Chow and Bradford, and I think the numbers have effectively held. So we'll try to get him back on this year, and at some point we'll get Brad back on as we get closer to campaign season. So
yeah, and my kind of optimistic take on the polling data is that Brad has way more name recognition upside than Chow does. Everybody knows Chow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like priced in. And name recognition is a major variable here.
And now people will start slowly paying attention. People are going to start cluing into the fact that it's an election year.
And that it's a two-person race.
That's right.
Right? When Tory, if Tory had been in, like, you don't really need to learn any new names. Now it's like, it's Brad. Even though if it's not Chow, it's Brad. So I think my read is that Brad has upside. Even like I know a lot of people who really dislike Brad, kind of like left-wing people. But I think like all that hate is also priced in because like,
if you care enough about these issues, you probably already are in the Chow numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So
and everybody else just has yet to discover them.
So the biggest like swing to me is just name recognition, and Brad has more room to grow on name recognition than Chow does. And he only has one name, so it's much easier to remember. Yeah. Okay, other stuff that we talked a few weeks ago, I guess, with Blair Scorgie, who told us about this Committee of Adjustments hearing that he had in Scarborough, where the committee kind of went off script and like rejected his application for minor variances, not on the basis of applying the 4 tests of the Planning Act to those variances, but they just disagreed with the underlying policy.
That's right.
So if anyone hasn't seen that, you should see that. Since then, Blair's been on a tear, and his client have been lobbying the planning department, development review, and the mayor's office to kind of improve the way committee operates. And Chow, to her credit, did introduce this agenda item. This was February 26th, so that's just like over a week ago now. Yeah. So I'll just read it because I think this is kind of interesting. It's not a total game changer, but it does indicate like a willingness to improve the way Committee of Adjustment hearings are performed. So it's called Updating the Effectiveness of the Committee of Adjustment. This went to Planning and Housing Committee again on February 26th. And I'm just going to read the committee decision. So the Planning and Housing Committee, 1, requested the Executive Director, Development Review, that's Oren Tamir, and any other divisions as appropriate to engage industry, builders, planners, and other users and stakeholders of the Committee of Adjustment and report in the second quarter of 2026 with preliminary findings, potential opportunities, and a work plan on A, improving customer service, streamlining decision-making, improving timelines, leveraging technology, simplifying submission requirements, and supporting faster delivery of housing while maintaining the integrity of the development review process. B, attracting and retaining highly qualified panel members for the next round of recruitment and appointments. C, improving panel training and continuous education, including on changes to city and provincial planning rules. D, standardizing the practice of development review, staff reports to the Committee of Adjustment, including comments where applicable indicating where projects align with council-approved policy decisions. And E, opportunities to harmonize and coordinate the application processes for tree injury or removal permits and minor variances to reduce challenges arising from conflicting outcomes. So this in typical Toronto and Canadian fashion, this is like a plan to study something. Nevertheless,
it signals something.
It signals like, a cleanup that is like probably overdue. And I think, like, again, major credit to both Blair and his client. I think his client's name is Ramit. These are all things that we want to see. Right now, it takes, if you submit drawings for a zoning review, which you then submit as part of your application for committee of adjustments, it takes 6 weeks for your zoning review. Then you submit for your committee of adjustment hearing date. It might take 2 weeks for them to like ask a few questions and get a few things like tweaked on your drawings to then set something 6 to 12 weeks out. Like, that process is just too long.
Yeah, like 3 months, 4 months. Yeah.
And it could be much faster. Like, we've talked about it. I was playing around with one of these AI coding tools. Zoning review is basically taking drawings and seeing where and how they vary from the bylaw.
What variances are needed.
This is something that like AI could do in 6 seconds instead of
right now, not some future development of AI.
And right now, maybe with like a 10 to 20% error rate. And I think by end of year, that would be much lower. But it's worth noting, and I think that people who maybe do IT procurement at the city don't know this, the human error rate is much higher than 20%. Yeah. On our files, it's probably
we've talked about
50%.
In defense of like these zoning examiners, is the policies are changing so quickly. Yeah. They're often not up to speed on the latest policy changes. And so they make mistakes in their own zoning reviews.
Yeah, I don't say this to attack the reviewers. I'm just saying that like the baseline, the benchmark is not perfection. The benchmark is our current status quo. If I could get a 80% likely to be correct zoning review in 6 minutes instead of 6 weeks, I could identify errors with our planner, resubmit and get it updated, and within 18 minutes you have it done. So I think that's a huge opportunity. Actually, we have a committee of adjustments hearing this evening, and I think I'm meeting one of the senior people at Development Review, so I might pitch them on that.
Should also be part of Brad's platform. You got to get this stuff implemented at City Hall.
And then I think you also just want more hearings, because often what happens is you'll get a letter from some city department that is not proposing refusal, but they're proposing further study and recommending deferral.
That's right.
But for us on one of our projects at Glencairn, deferral meant 5 months lost because it was deferred through summer, and summer is like notoriously hard to get on the docket. So like, I think if you did a AI assisted, much faster review process and then just more frequent hearings, this whole process would be much less
the thing that stood out to me about what you just read, the decision made by the committee, was that, for one, I think there's a broader question of like the scope and purpose of the committee to begin with. And like, are there things that should be taken out of the scope of committee, which I think is something Blair was also advocating for, not just like improving the effectiveness of committee, but also questioning the types of applications that go to committee versus the types of applications that just go to
the best way to have fewer go to committee is just update the bylaw to have less.
But also, like we talked about, can staff have like some right to approve delegated authority on certain types of variances?
That I wish was part of that,
which is not clearly stated here.
It's not at all, actually.
And the other thing that I've noticed, just like anecdotally at committee hearings, and this is maybe like a really simple IT procurement question, the amount of time that gets wasted just scrolling through these PDF attachments, trying to look for the right file. It just feels like we're still working off of like Microsoft Office, like 1998. And when there's probably like a much easier way, because you're like 11th in line at a committee session, and you don't know if that's going to be an hour in or 3 hours in because of how long it takes to get through every other hearing, right? So
you mean on the day of?
On the day, you could fit more applications into a single hearing if it was just more streamlined.
If you're really kind of like blue skying this, no new information should even be raised at committee. There should be decisions kind of like, this is why delegated authority I think is a good idea, because the only reason for an in-person committee hearing is to provide an opportunity for deputations. Which means that the process gets more political than it should be. And delegated authority would help eliminate that, because then you could just judge the planning merits of the application, not what neighbors
that would be the bolder action here. Would not be like educating committee members. It'd be like eliminating certain types of deputations, allowing for like written opposition but not in-person opposition, whatever those things are that actually like
we have in Etobicoke. The staff is not the best, but better than the committee. And actually most parts of the city at this point, staff is better than committee, because again, committees, there's this major unknown about like, which neighbor will show up and pull which emotional heartstring or whatever, and kind of like swing.
And it's worth saying, like the amount, like you see some committee applications go in that are not just like small variances on a multiplex. They're like variances to a 10-story building, where now all of a sudden there's just so much more context needed that a committee member is just not equipped to make a decision on, but they're being forced to make a decision on. right?
And I did like this whole idea of like improving panel training, attracting and retaining new panel members. A lot of these, it's actually not even, I was going to make it an age thing. It's not, because some of my favorite committee members are quite old. But, there's been so much change in Toronto planning that some people are stuck in like the old.
There's a huge
kind of way of doing
information that you just can't possibly know it all if you're a committee member.
And then continuous education, like reminding, Blair had this joke that almost, he didn't say this. I made it a land acknowledgement comparable, but like almost like a land acknowledgement, they should restate like what their mandate is, what it is not, like what their scope is, what it is not, because again, their mandate is not to have opinions on policy, but to evaluate variances for policy against these 4 tests. So anyway, this is generally quite nice. And even though I made this comment about like Toronto loves to study things instead of just enacting reform, to have the report ready by the second quarter of 2026 is by Toronto standards actually pretty quick, pretty good
in the next couple of months.
Yeah, so this is cool.
And I think the follow up to that is that I think also Blair flagged a committee hearing in East York yesterday or the day before, where the committee acknowledged in their remarks that they needed to stick to the scope of the committee. So already even just like starting to highlight this is reminding committee members, hey, you're not above the policy. The policy applies. And so I think that's already having a positive effect. So kudos to Blair.
Well, Blair's pretty funny because he was our planner for our project at 2611 Dundas. And when we went to committee, there were all these neighbors that submitted letters of opposition, and one deputed, actually 3 deputed, 1 in person, 2 online. And in his response to all, he was like reminding the members, this is like none of your business, none of your business, none of your business.
You're not your responsibility.
And the committee member was like, I understand it's not our scope, but like, can you at least speak to it? And the committee was actually quite good on that one. But he's very good at like reminding them like what they're actually here for. So you kind of need someone like that. Okay, so we'll keep track of that. And again, like as more zoning bylaw updates take place, including the PMTSA stuff we talked about, more projects are going to go through a committee-only route versus a full zoning bylaw amendment. So it becomes more and more important. Like committee 15 years ago was mostly people needed a variance on like their shed or their deck. Now it's development, like infill development, and it's just like a different. And
the cost of delay now is real. The cost of waiting to like build your deck, it was like not a big deal. Now it's I think about Blair's client who got denied for their 6-story building on Pharmacy Avenue. They're going to be back in a 3-4 month queue. They're sitting on land. They're sitting on costs, right?
Well, we have this committee hearing this evening. And one of the city departments, I don't want to call them out until we see how it goes, recommended originally refusal, and we kind of like argued our case, and they said, okay, not refusal, but deferral, so we can study it further. And we told them, like, if we defer this, we're dead. We're paying, however much we're paying per month in mortgage payments, we're dead. That's it.
And it happened on our Glencairn committee hearing where we got deferred by 5 months because of a not even a disagreement, just like a miscommunication between 2 city departments on what had been agreed to and what hadn't been agreed to.
Even worse than that, we reached out for an opinion. So just to give some context, we had this project on Glencairn with 0 parking proposed. Community planning was good with it. Forestry was good with it. We were good with it. No neighbors were opposing. We go to committee a day before the deadline for all comments to be submitted. We get this letter from transportation planning recommending refusal or deferral so that we could explore a front parking pad, which we would have been happy to do, but that introduces these new planning variances, and you can't really get those support for those planning variances unless transportation is pushing for it. If they had pushed for it a month earlier, we would have coordinated with planning. We would have updated
our preferred design as a parking pad.
Totally.
Because it's helpful for tenants.
So it was 5 months of time and money that was just bad process. Because transportation prefers this outcome, we prefer this outcome, and planning is like okay with that.
And just like really tangibly, not a huge amount on the design side, but just like that probably cost us $25,000 to $30,000 in delays. Just by sitting on a loan
for small projects really matters. So and then here, I guess the point that addresses that is opportunities to harmonize and coordinate the application process. No, that's for users. Standardizing the practice of development review staff reports to the committee of adjustment. Yeah, there you go. So it's like when they're reviewing, their reports should not come in at the very last minute with something that is contrary to
happened to us on Dundas as well. We got Urban Forestry submitted a letter, at the last minute. And, now we have a condition on our approval, but it's an easy condition. But it's like, hey, we could have known that a month prior, right?
And it's kind of like a silly one.
Yeah, it's a silly one, but yeah.
Okay. Well, that's positive development. So we'll see how that goes.
On theme for Toronto, it's like small steps in the right direction that, could be bolder, could be a little bit more deeper form, but it's still positive.
It is in the right direction. The other thing I want to talk about, the Missing Middle Summit, we've talked about. So all of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast, we're basically going to talk about it at a live event. This will be the 4th year running for the Missing Middle Summit. It's happening on May 13th, all day. It's at the 60th floor of Scotia Plaza, which is, you've seen it, this cool event space. So if anybody's interested, missingmiddlesummit.com. You could get your tickets today. We've already sold out of all our early bird tickets. We're halfway through selling out of our general attendance tickets. So lock in your tickets.
And for people who haven't been in the past, I mean, like one thing that I think stands out for attendees from the last 3 years is it's very, it's not fluffy. It's very how to do development. How to, if you want to get started, if you're looking at buying your first property, if you're trying to move from like a small project to a mid-sized project, the types of things you're going to hear are like, what are the steps to do that? What are the planning?
Even if you're doing recurring projects, the policy, as we know, changes so often. To stay on top of it, you're going to hear on stage from architects, from lenders, from lawyers, from planners, from engineers, consultants, general contractors, insurance providers, energy modelers, basically like anyone you need to know or talk to get one of these projects from acquisition to occupancy.
And one newer theme that people are starting to run into this year is the HST implications when you're completing your rental
tax
buildings.
Accountants. So it's a great event. 4 years running, we've sold out every year. It's getting more and more, I think, interesting and exciting every year because the policies keep getting a little bit better.
When the industry surrounding this scale of development has really like matured over the last 4 years pretty substantially. So, it used to be a bunch of hobbyists. Now it's like real companies doing real projects.
Now you have people on their, 5th, 6th, 7th project. Or guys like Mod City on their 30th project or whatever it is. So missingmiddlesummit.com. It'll be a good one, May 13th. Maybe give us an update. We talked a little bit about some of our projects, but we've not done one of these in a little while. So
yeah, totally. We've got a couple of projects that are getting, so this year for us is a pretty big year in terms of getting projects into the ground. We may end up with 5 projects starting construction in 2026, but at minimum we'll be starting construction on 3. The other 2, I say, are if things go well, end of 2026, and if things go a little slower, maybe beginning of 2027.
Yeah.
But 2611 Dundas West and the junction that we mentioned, we got approved at the Committee of Adjustment. We now recently got our CMHC financing application approved. And for people interested in this type of project, even if you're just curious as to like what we do, we're hosting a little event about that project specifically next Wednesday night, which is March 11th. And we can put a link in the show notes, I assume. I don't know that we've done that before, but we'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, or email either of us, Chris at torontocenter.co, Matt at torontocenter.co.
If you're interested in learning more. I mean, it is an investor event, so we do these things to try to build up interest for the projects that we're working on.
Yeah.
And so that one's going to move forward really quickly. Probably the next one that is going to go into construction ideally in the next month is our project at 796 Glencairn that we just mentioned that had that 5-month delay at committee. We're into our building permit review with feedback from the buildings department and expecting that'll get all sorted out in the next couple of weeks to be able to start construction. So things are chugging along. And then, right behind that one, both physically but also in chronology, is going to be our project at 215 to 219 Glen Park Avenue. And somewhere in there is going to be our start of the Dundas West project. So lots going. These are all going to be Q2 starts, certainly.
And again, Glen Park, that's today's committee, so we'll see how it goes. But as it stands, and this, I got to give a special shout out to Greg Ewan's Inventory Planning. No letters of opposition from any neighbors, no letters of opposition, refusal, or deferral from any city department. Should be good.
Yeah,
and that
did not come without effort.
that came with a lot of effort. Which
right.
Again, I tip my cap to Greg Ewans, who's been fantastic on this, and we'll see how it goes. But we're feeling good now that we had this one department kind of back off a pretty crazy ask.
Yeah. So the next 6 months for us, which exciting for the business, is we're really going to start getting our reps in on construction, both in terms of like pre-construction planning, tendering, finalizing building permits, and actually getting into the ground, hiring a super on our first couple of projects. That's right. Yeah. So lots going on between now and the summer. So it's looking like a pretty exciting year.
Okay, with that said, I don't know what we have planned for the next episode.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of more guests to line up. I think we've talked about getting Brad back on the show. We've talked about getting Nate Erskine-Smith on the show. We'll probably go back to a polling episode at some point, but yeah, we'll have something lined up for next week. And I'm sure there's still rumors circulating around that we may have talked about in a previous episode as to like what the province and the federal government is doing as it relates to development charge reviews and potential offsets. Like, so there'll be stuff coming.
Maybe sure. in a few episodes we could talk a little bit more about Build Ontario Fund, Build Canada Homes. They're these kind of government programs that we're digging into, trying to understand a little bit better. Not fully defined, so a big part of that is just like speaking with the staff, and we could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, because I think that both levels of government are trying to figure out how to kickstart some of the like paused projects in the industry. So I do think we're going to see some headlines coming out of those two government organizations specifically in the next month or two. Related to how they're trying to play a role in getting housing going.
Yeah. But, okay. We'll keep this one short and sweet, and we'll check back in a week or so.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
All the best.
Peace out.